Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Hillary Raimo, and today I'm sitting down talking to Doug McGuirk, and we're going to have a great discussion, hopefully, about everything that's going on in the world and what we're all facing, and offer some ideas and ways to cope, manage, and thrive. And that's the goal for today's recording. Hi, Doug. Welcome so much. I'm so happy to hear. I'm so happy that you're back and we're talking again because it's been a long time. I've interviewed your wife. And over the years, and you guys have been doing such great things with coaching and all of that. So I'm really excited to have you fill us all in and what you've been up to.
Well, thank you. I'm going to take I don't think I need these headphones. I'm just going to do this. Hold on. So, yeah, we've been rocking and rolling as best we can. And this has definitely been an interesting time. We're not, of course, expecting this to happen the way it did. And obviously there's a lot going on that, people may be going, okay. But that aside at the moment, I think that this has also given us a great opportunity to dig in and really serve and start asking the good questions is how can we make a difference?
I did a lot of talk at the beginning of this year because we're starting a new decade, and it's always a great time to set goals and reassess where you're at and what you've done that's worked and what hasn't worked. And so there was such great momentum that started off this new decade. Everybody was so excited with making all these new plans, and then all of a sudden things happened and threw that all for a loop. Do you think that could be because we're not maybe supposed to be doing what we're doing and new direction is the new in?
According to whom? Right. Yeah. Isn't that interesting that how, things start going really well and, there's so much we don't know about the world, about the universe, about, next level spiritual influences that so much of any of this could be true. And I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. I'm just saying that, is that possible? Like, could we have been going further into an area that powers that be were not too thrilled about, that realized that would start infringing upon their ability to do whatever they're doing. And, we say that we're all familiar with The Secret, the movie The Secret, right? And there was a book called The Master Key System by Charles Haanel. Are you familiar with it?
No.
So this was a book that was written in it's either the really early 1900s or late 1800s, and it was banned. And it was essentially all the work that we're doing now, all of the, being more conscious, all of the laws of the universe. It was utilizing essentially the law of attraction, the law of gestation, all of those things. It was written in old school English, which is really interesting, but it was banned because it was giving away some of the thoughts, some of the behaviors, some of the ways the elite were actually using. It came out and it over time started to obviously spur Think and Grow Rich and things of that nature, which again modeled the most successful people. And, I wonder, is it possible that maybe there's some resistance going on to the level of awareness and consciousness that a great many of us have been experiencing and forwarding?
Well, it's almost like they're allowed to have the secrets, but nobody else is allowed to have the secrets, right?
Yeah.
You're only allowed to go so far in your human empowerment movement, but then you have to stop and be servitudious. Is that even a word? I don't know.
Well, it works for me. I know what you're saying, so it must be.
So, I think about this a lot, and I remind myself that I can't not know what I know.
Right.
And people really can't not know what they know either. It seems like society at this point has become more short-term memory loss type. Our attention spans are so less, and we can only really watch maybe 3 minutes of a video before we have to be entertained or we lose interest. I mean, the digital age has brought a lot of interesting studies to the forefront where we have almost changed as a species because of technology and the way that information has become so available to us. And
well, we have a second brain. I mean, no, I can't see it. Yeah, our second brain. It like, think about it. How often are we're not even thinking for ourselves in so many respects, just habitually, like, oh, let me just search it. And now I, wonder if we can even trust the sources we're getting the information from in the first place.
Well, that's a big deal. I was watching a speech by one of the Google executives recently who talked about we are now in the fourth decade of the internet. And the fourth decade of the internet is about reining in content and reining in information. That the third decade, which I was a broadcaster on, and so I can relate to this, is that it was like the wild, wild west. Information would come in, we could do whatever we wanted, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and we can all go that direction, and everybody's loving the internet because they can put it up anywhere and everywhere, right? And now they're saying, no, we don't want this information here and there, and they're sorting. It's like a sorting hat in Harry Potter. You have
it's 1984. It's newspeak. It's like now that censorship is coming in, and they conditioned us through. If you remember when cell phones came out, they were free. Everything was free. They had all this stuff, and everyone got so conditioned to it to the point where they couldn't live without it. Same thing has happened with the internet and the way in the information boom, the information technology, information marketing. It's information marketing. It's even called that. And now they're able to, because we're so conditioned, because we have this conforming bias as well, they can start controlling the flow of that information and make it seem like they're not controlling us.
Why are we falling for it? Why are people falling for it? What happened to all this critical thinking skills we all learned as we grew up? Where did it all go?
Great question. A part of it is my experience has been that human beings, you've heard the saying maybe that human beings are lazy, right? And I don't agree that people are lazy. I think that people are extraordinarily motivated to do as little as possible to get a desired result. So we're conditioned to headlines. We're conditioned to, because we're so smart and because what our brains do is we create stories all the time, we fill in the gaps. So we have our conformed bias, whatever it is, and we see it in politics, whatever side you're on. If you are on the left or the right, you're on the left or the right, and it doesn't matter what the person says on the opposite side, you are going to conform to the bias that they're wrong, and whatever the person says on your side, you're going to conform to the bias that they're right. And because we're so conditioned to headlines, we fill in the gaps of the story. So we read a headline, it conforms to the bias that we subscribe to, and then we write a story. We actually construct a story that makes sense, and then we share it with other people, and they go, oh yeah, that must be true. And then we type it out. And then someone goes, oh, I read that so-and-so, such and such, and then it goes off into the nethersphere, and then whomever's controlling that data will then allow that to go through, and then it can't be proven nor disproven, because even if you do try and disprove it, the conforming bias allows you to say, well, no, that came from a source that's crap. Oh, it was fake news. Yeah, it was fake news, no matter what side you're on.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and we've experienced it. I know you have, I have, is that with all this going on to go, excuse me, so can I just ask a question?
Wait a minute.
Yeah. And they're like, that's it. You want old ladies to die. I'm like, well, no, I'm just throwing up a little question here. Why are we blindly following? I'm not saying let's kill anybody, but if it's okay.
Where does that come from, Doug? So we talked about how that moves through the grapevine of sorts, but where does this attack come from? Have we been trained through the Trump years to just attack and then think about it?
I think it happened before that, but it's gotten certainly bolder on both sides. What I'm seeing from my perspective, this is my humble perspective, and I've only been studying psychology and humans for
I want your opinion.
A few decades, is that when we're now more than ever doubling down. So what's happening is the stakes are getting higher, and people are not, very few people I shouldn't say all, but obviously some are. There are few people who are going, you know what, I was wrong. I made a mistake. Oops. But more often than not, what we're seeing is people doubling down on whatever it is and digging their feet in even more, because it is a human being, our brain is wired to be, the strongest need is to be congruent with the way it identifies itself, or it be right. And what has happened is, I think the saddest thing that I've seen is the demonization of people rather than ideas. And what it's happening is that we have to double down, because now I am that person. Now I am a whatever, conservative, a liberal, a Republican, a Democrat, whatever the mindset is. I am a coronavirus, like hacker, or I'm a coronavirus victim. And that's the other thing, is I believe that, again, just my humble opinion, that we've been conditioned to victimhood. So what has happened is that now we're addicted to being a victim. So it's very easy. It's a perfect storm of creating an environment that everyone goes, there's nothing I could do. Help me, government. Help me, whatever. And putting their hands out, and the government coming in going, oh, we got all the answers for you, and we're going to take care of this. And, let's trust this person. And you're like, oh, okay, well, excuse me, the person you just said to trust, that doesn't look right. Oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And then you get demonized and attacked. And one of the saddest things I've seen is, I have friends in all areas, and conservative and liberal, came from the music industry. So I have tons of friends in the music industry, which you can imagine where they slant. And I've seen them say, like, F Trump. And if you support Trump, and if you do this, then defriend me right now. I don't care. F you. I'm going, well, look, I'm not picking a side here. I'm just curious how you're going to have a rounded and holistic experience in life if you're creating your own bubble right now, because you won't even be friends with someone who may or may not support. And even if they did, and now I'm not saying I do or I don't, but now I'm feeling like you don't respect me and my opinion anyway.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And opinion has become a rather dangerous thing. And I have watched very carefully as the narrative switches from be your own person, original thought, original creation, to just believe what you're told and do what you're told and be compliant. And if you're not compliant, you're not a very good person. And maybe you should go live somewhere else. And maybe you shouldn't, but maybe I shouldn't pay taxes then. My money goes to work for this government, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't have a choice.
What's so interesting is those people who say that were the ones who claim themselves to be woke.
Right. I watched that happen a lot. I saw a lot of that. I've shed a lot of friends, so-called friends, over the last few years, just for that very reason. They didn't like the fact that I wasn't attacking, especially during the Me Too movement. I think the Me Too movement did women a very poor disservice, because they were recognized for victimization, and they were given justice based on victimization. But the victimization, just like you said, was the central part.
Right.
So it wasn't about, well, let's talk about relationships, and let's talk about consent, and let's talk about what it really means to be in relationship with somebody, period. Instead of going back, 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you turn around and attack them so you can have your day on the camera and get your money from court. I don't know if I really trusted the Me Too movement, because it felt politicalized. Well, and anything that feels politicalized these days, I just kind of hesitantly sort through it and make up my own mind at the end of it. But
well, I don't know if you remember, Tony Robbins had that situation. And I worked with Tony, I was on the road with him for many years, and I knew exactly, I like to see even what he was talking about, since I already had context and I knew what he was trying to say, and I totally agreed with it. Mm-hmm. Like, what he was saying was not, Tony's one of the biggest teddy bears and one of the most loving people I know. Is he perfect? Of course not. That's the other thing. We're expecting perfection from people, and it's not even possible. But I saw him being vilified and attacked, and no one took context into it. And that's the other thing, is like, even having a slight difference of opinion now, you can't, there's the gray area is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's where the critical thinking occurs, is in the gray area. that's in the analysis. It's the parsing, and we're giving such a narrow line. And I see it. I'm somewhat guilty of it. I'm not throwing out tons of stuff on Facebook. My approach is very different, where, you know, I want to help people think. I want to help people make better assessments of where they're at and do something about it without demonizing. And it's a delicate line, because it's very hard to ask questions now. Like, to even pose the question is creating some major issues. And I love you and our mutual friend Jason, and like, I mean, you guys are taking huge stands, and I totally respect, honor, and get it. And I'm 100% on your side.
I am taking a stand. And you know why? Because if I don't do it, who is?
Right.
And that's the same thing for every single person who takes a stand. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? Because otherwise, people are just going to roll over and do what they're told and be compliant. And I understand, you know, staying away and the social distancing, but a lot of other things don't make sense to me. See, I'm a mom. I have 2 grown adult kids, right? And I've raised them, and I know every mom out there knows what it's like when their child comes down with a cold or the flu. You have to be an at-home doctor, basically. You have to know how to treat them, what to do, and you have to make calls that decisions that maybe your doctor isn't there to do. And it's been happening since the dawn of time. So why all of a sudden is all of our instinct and intuition being uprooted, trying to be uprooted anyway, and tossed out the window? Because, well, why would you know best? You're not a doctor. You didn't go to med school for 4 years. Well, what do you mean? I've been dealing with the flu with my kids for 20 years.
Right.
Where's the credibility in that? I mean, of course. I just feel like a narrative is being shoved down our throat.
100%.
Okay. We're being told to skip common sense. And I don't like it. So of course I'm going to use my outlets to talk about it and bring people on to talk about it. And I have no problem with people with other perspectives or opinions. We have become so hardened to the fact that opinion is still what makes us organic beings. We're allowed to, nobody has the same experience, right? I don't have the same experience that you have. And we all come from different places. We all have different life experience. So opinion is based on the totality of the human being right then and there. And who are we to say they're wrong?
Right. And the other thing that what I, in line to what you're saying, is like, I use the example like the NRA. Like, I'm full disclosure, I am a gun owning American. I had a license in New York. I have a license down here in Florida. And that's just my belief. It's one of our rights. It's part of our freedom. I deserve the right to defend my family and myself. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that the NRA or anyone who is a believer of the right to carry and bear arms, that they're going, let's make sure that we can murder people. Like, they're not doing that. They're going, I want the right to be able to defend myself, and I don't trust that I don't want to give that right away and trust that someone else is going to do it for me. But it seems, nor do I believe that people who are anti-gun are like, let's make sure that anyone who doesn't have one can get killed. Like, I don't think that either. Like, we got to think purpose over process. Mm-hmm. We can both agree that we want to be safe. We can disagree on how maybe we get there, but that's where the magic happens. That's where, when we have the conversation and there's that friction and we could ask the questions, that's where miracles happen. That's where discoveries happen. We're not going to discover anything if we all think the exact same way. We're not going to create anything new. And that's what's boggling my mind, is that people aren't like, or some people aren't thinking like what the collateral damage is going to be from giving up the small. And again, with Ben Franklin said it, I think, no one will, whatever it is, we'll be giving up our freedoms in the name of security. Right. But
aren't we doing just that?
Right. And that's what he said. You'll never, and then you'll be neither free nor secure. Right. And then, like, and not to go off on a weird thing, but like, one of the most like crazy things that Hitler said, like, is what kind of his mantra. And one of the things that got him to where he was: if you tell a lie bold enough, loud enough, long enough, eventually people will start believing you. Mm-hmm. And that's what's
Well,
happened.
we did take in a lot of Nazis after World War II, and father of rocketry. We've used the scientists.
Oh
We
my
sheltered
goodness.
them in Rockefeller
There's so
Lake
many
and
rabbit holes we
Westwood,
could go
right?
down. Yeah.
And
100%.
you're right, and that's the thing that I see happening now. We have spent so much time being told who to hate, when to hate, who's our enemy now. Remember, it was the Muslims, then it's the Russians, now it's the Democrats, and it's just constant. And I want to talk about how do we help people come out of that conditioning. It's almost like a brainwashing, really, because if you hear that lie long enough, over and over and over again, you start to believe it, then you tell all your friends that that's truth, and then it spreads and spreads and spreads. How do you break that kind of conditioning from a mental mindset standpoint?
So that's a great thing. So the way, I mean, Heidi and I, as you know, we work with people in relationships. And one of the basic tenets that we hold is assume the reason why our relationship is as successful as it is, and where, it's awesome. One of the things is that we assume the best about each other. Mm-hmm. So when we're in a spirited debate, when there's something something's not right, if one of us says something, we don't have a lot of arguments, we don't have a lot of fight-spirited debates, but when we do, we get represented to, well, wait a minute, like, what do we really want here? Like, we've both been guilty of maybe snapping, maybe saying something that was not particularly nice or caring, but it wasn't out of an intent of hurting someone necessarily. And even if it was, there's positive intent behind everything, right? So the challenge right now is, and we have to do everything we can, is to get out of the state of fear and more in the state of curiosity. Like, I'm not even saying let's jump to love right yet. Let's just be curious. Mm-hmm. Like, what else is going on? What is the positive intent behind this? Now, notwithstanding all of the other things that could be happening on a high level, whether it be a spiritual battle that's going on, whether it's a governmental thing, whatever, those are things we can't control. We might be able to influence, but the only way we're going to influence is by us representing ourselves to that we're in this together. And that if what we really want is that freedom, is that ability to serve, the ability to be together, the ability to love, to live, to laugh, to do all those things, we have to assume that each of us, it's like, this is where the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, like, we're born with these inalienable rights. If we don't get back to the basics of just loving on each other, or just being curious about each other, or accepting of each other, we're going to it's very Machiavellian. It's like the art of war. It's keeping the people fighting with each other. And that's how we're losing the control. So I would say, the first step is be more accepting, more curious about our friends, not jumping to these conclusions. If we disagree, that doesn't mean that someone is wrong. That means they have maybe a different strategy that they would get to the outcome, like you shared with your kids, right? Your children, you may have a different strategy, and you have your references and evidences that it's worked because they're all grown up. So it worked. You knew enough to be successful. Now, could you actually have come up with something that would have been really helpful for someone else? Absolutely. But if they're saying you're wrong, then they're never going to know that what you had was maybe something new. And if we look at at one point, people were killed because they thought the world was round. Like, no, the world is flat, but
and here we are, and the world is round. And, I'd like to say also that women have passed on mom information and advice for ages and ages and ages.
And by the way,
I learned from my mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, who learned from her mother, and it has all trickled down through the ages to be wise advice, right?
Right.
Men do the same thing. They trickle down wisdom and advice to the men in their family, and it has a way of progressing and becoming more and more valuable. And I feel
Isn't that what school is anyway? Isn't that what an education is? Like, who decided that because it came from a school, that it's more or less valid. As a matter of fact, I look at this as more like Back to School. Remember Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield? Where he's in there and he's like, you guys don't know the first thing about business, and here you are teaching it.
Right. Right. I feel like we've lost a way of keeping and honoring that. And it's felt like a separation almost, like we've been separated from the wisdom of generations and families and different groups of people. And I wish that we had not done that. I think we would be a different world if we had maintained the value of that. I know some cultures still do. My Native American friends certainly live a completely different life than we do. And I see the value in how they treat that wisdom and how it's handed down. And there's almost a ceremonial aspect to it. It's almost like an initiation it's like cooking. Let's put it into cooking. It's like learning the best recipe your grandma or your great-great-grandma ever made, right? And completing that recipe to the best of its ability and being able to mimic the great recipe of whoever down the line. And instead, we're going to make the recipe. Go to McDonald's. It's faster. It's quicker. You go through the drive-thru. Who cares what your recipe is? I feel like that's kind of a little microcosm of how it's become.
Yeah. Well, and I actually have a friend of mine who's very high up and well connected in media and that kind of thing. And a friend of theirs is a high level executive at a particularly liberal, very famous news agency. And this person is a quiet conservative because they fear for their position. But is a high level executive and has shared with this person, like, they know that people are, short, their headline informer, they're low information, headline, short bursts of information. And we are well aware of it. And that's the game we play. And and they're very anti-Trump. So, and they're admitting it. Like she's like, I want my job, so I'm not outing myself or talking about it. But
why would her job be in jeopardy because of a difference of opinion? That is exactly what we've been talking about.
Right. That's the reality.
That's the reality of people's lives right now. They can't really offer their opinions. They have to hide it and keep it under control because they really could lose their jobs or their friendships or all kinds of things, really.
Well, and what's so crazy to me is again, we like going down the woke thing. I can't really reconcile someone referring themselves to be woke and then demonizing someone who believes in God or someone who wants to go to church or someone who wants to practice whatever their thing is. Like, where is woke? And I'm making a gross generalization, but my experience has been, most of my woke experiences have been with people who are more atheist or consider themselves spiritual, so much to the point where they're saying F the whatever religious establishment. And I'm not judging either. Right. I'm just curious as to how you could.
I think you hit it on the head when you said you should be curious. Don't go jump to love yet. Because when you jump to love,
too far for some.
Very dismissive. I have to say, my woke friends who are jumping to love, we're all love, we're all one. Well, no, we're not. We're not. I mean, there's so many differences. Some of us have disproportionate financial means. Some of us have better healthcare insurance. So in a situation like this, are we all one when we go to the hospital and I have this plan and you have that plan? No. Are we all one when we go to the bank and I have this amount of money in my account and you have this amount of money? So there's so many ways that that's an escape.
Well, and it goes even further because those same people sometimes are the ones who are saying F the police and establishment and all of that. Yet meanwhile, they're the ones who are screaming at people for, they'll be the ones who are turning people in for being too close to each other or finding a business. And basically, so you're becoming the big hypocrisy. Like, it's bizarre. And that's another thing that
we're being asked to turn on each other.
Literally asked.
Sliced bread.
Yeah.
Well, what's your neighbor doing? And they've even set up hotlines to turn your neighbors in, to turn people in. I was at a park yesterday where very few people ever go, and the police was doing there was a police car doing a little drive around just to make sure there weren't too many people there or too many people together. And Cuomo, I forget where you live. You're in Florida, right? So
Yeah, I'm from New York.
Okay, so here in New York, our governor put into effect yesterday a $1,000 fine for standing less than 6 feet apart. And my first common sense question was, well, how are they going to enforce that?
Yeah, me too. I mean,
that's the first common sense. That's the first thing that went through my. Well, how are they going to enforce that? And everybody goes, "What do you mean? You're supposed to be 6 feet apart. What do you care?" I'm like, "Well, you should care how they're going to enforce that, because I've heard stories where police are just showing up, and then it came out through MSN, I think it was, or maybe it was NBC, I forget." But it came out that the healthcare workers have the right now to release your home address to law enforcement because you've been diagnosed positive with COVID. What about HIPAA laws? What about privacy laws? And then the other thing that I was concerned right away about, and I'm not even a medical expert, was that if you do these teleconference doctor sessions now, that's the big thing. Well, the infrastructure is conveniently in place for that. That's not something that just happens overnight, really. You can't have the kind of encrypted technology that you really need to ensure privacy.
Well, in fairness, that's been going on for a while. Like we've been doing that with the addiction field and all that.
Right. So immediately they launched that, but there was this little tiny blip on one of our news stations here about, I'm not quite so sure how that affects HIPAA laws. I'm like, you're reporting on something and you're not quite sure how it affects HIPAA laws?
We haven't done our research, but we're just going to.
Sure, but we're going to let you know, and then we're just going to move on to something else so you don't have to question that too much, right? HIPAA was put into place to protect patients' privacies. And the minute they put healthcare files and all your records onto the digital platforms, how many hacks did we have with ransom notes and all kinds of fuckery have happened since it's all happened? And now here we are being told to go on to talk to our doctors by video, but it might not be encrypted. And your data is being gathered by the data center that Penn set up as part of the $2.2 trillion bailout. And they're turning this whole thing. If you look at China, I look at China. I actually Google on and get into what I can get into to see what the real headlines are over there, because our internets are completely pretty much different, to the point where one is censored to the point of communist ideals and the other one is getting there. We're getting there. But they had such a draconian lockdown where they required their population to download an app that tracked them, and they have a barcode that comes up to say if they're healthy or not, and they have to show that to travel through the country, do anything. I mean, what kind of overreach is that really into someone's personal and private life? If you're not upset about that, there's something wrong with you. I'm starting to believe that if people can't really see the problem with that, then there's got to be a big disconnect somewhere. What do you think that disconnect is?
Well, I think it's based in fear. I think what happens is the more fear that we're in, the less we're thinking. And it actually does mess with our neurology. If you think about, on one level, when you're first getting in a relationship, right? The person you're in your relationship with can do no wrong. You love that person, and you're just not thinking right. That's the filter you run is, oh, whatever. Oh, that's so cute, or whatever. When we're in fear, we're willing to do whatever it takes to relieve ourselves of that fear, because we've been conditioned to everybody and everything is the boogeyman. We buy into it because that part of our brain, the way it's the filters it's running, it actually gets a sense of certainty and security over the stress and fear that they were experiencing, and at what cost. Because, I mean, if you think about it, if people were really smart, and we've all been guilty of it, because this is a marketing war. That's really what it is. Sure, people have learned how to market,
yes.
Right? So how many people do we know that have spent money they don't have for a television, for a car, for a house, for a watch, for anything, because it's going to make them feel a certain way? And that's just normal. We've already been conditioned. We feel crappy enough that we are willing to put ourselves in debt so that we could feel a little bit better about ourselves based on the television screen, the watch we have, the car we drive, the jacket we're wearing, or whatever, even though it will put us into debt that we're going to be paying 10 times more. Common sense dictates not to do it, yet we still do it just so we could feel a little bit better. And our common sense knows it's not going to actually last, which is why we go out and buy it again and buy more and get the whatever, right? Now add to a situation where we're conditioned, we're put into a state of fear, of actually fearing for our lives. And that's the challenge. That's how people are thinking. So yes, they will do anything. Like the other day I was playing outdoor racquetball, just outdoor racquetball, which by the way, and we were all 6 feet away. Yes, we were touching the ball. Okay, I get it. But we were 6 feet away, and it was the day after DeSantis did the lockdown here. And these 4 people, all healthy, we've been playing racquetball forever. We just trying outdoor because the gyms are closed. And it's a very different game. You're actually very far from each other because there's not 4 walls and all that.
Right,
3.
yeah.
A woman is walking her dog. It was a private park, but it was in an HOA. Walking her dog, comes over and starts screaming at us that DeSantis is just, she's on the board of the HOA. This park is closed. You got to, and starts screaming. And of course that triggered the woman it was her facility, and they start having it out. And then we're like, well, look, we're just going to finish the game. It's like, well, I'm going walking back. If I'm not, you better be done when I get back. Comes back and starts screaming again.
What?
Screaming at us. And then this was, and her husband's like, I'm going to take pictures of their cars and send it to the police. And I'm going to post it on Facebook. This is what's happening. And then she screams at us, she better not get COVID because we're playing racquetball.
But why would she get COVID if you're playing racquetball? The people don't understand what a virus is. And this brings us full circle back to what we were talking about before. It's like or how your health works, or how your intuition works, or how all of this makes sense. You are going to believe what you're told, and you're going to act like that.
And if you're in fear, you're going to do, and that's the thing. That's really what it boils down to is people are right now, they're in fear and feeling they're out of control. Everything that has been taken from them, their ability to do what they need to do in order to survive and or thrive, has been taken from them. So what you'll notice is people have different strategies, and it's more intense. The people who use controlling, like control, are the ones going around reporting people, screaming at people, telling them what to do, yelling and doing all that. The people who are like, I'm going to figure it out, I always do, are the ones like, you and I were just like, all right, we got to figure it out. We're going to pivot. How can we help people? How we can make a difference? Sure. Let's be calm. And that's probably the way we are in all situations. There are people who are right now, this is where Heidi and I, our hearts bleed for them, are the people who they're getting their control by beating their kids, by beating their spouses.
So let's talk about that, Doug, because there's been numerous studies done, and articles are starting to roll out, and news reports are coming in that the domestic violence levels have increased tenfold since this has happened. So let's spend the rest of our time together talking about that. Relationships. You're stuck home. Maybe it's not stuck. Maybe you are home and you might feel stuck. So how can people heal their relationships through this? How can they use this as an opportunity to heal the weaknesses in the relationship that surface? Well,
the first thing you do is go over to Love Coach Heidi and connect with Heidi.
Great, by the way, his wife, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's back to curiosity. It goes back to assuming the best over someone and having more compassion, right? Right now, when we are feeling that lack of control, that's what we're doing. And here's the challenge. Like if someone's abusing and beating someone, you got to call the police. Get them out, get the person out.
But they're not allowed to go out.
The police are going to come. They're like, I guess I can't imagine, because my mom said the same thing. She said that she has friends, she's up in New York, who have children who are cops. And they said that, since they're not like on the road or anything, they're not really pulling people over. There's not a lot going on, but all they're doing is domestic violence calls. So they are showing up. To what end, I don't know. But
do you think that that is a reliable number, reliable source then? If there's nothing else to do except to show up for domestic violence calls, do you think maybe we're just hearing more about it because there's less going on? Okay.
I think there's definitely more going on, because when people are under pressure, they resort to old patterns. So domestic abuse is going to go up, drinking, drug use, all of that's going to go up, and eating, comfort eating is going up, right? I mean, that's just, it is. It is what it is. You can't really argue it, because it happens every hurricane. People overload on food and they're finished their snacks, their hurricane snacks before the hurricane even comes, and everyone jokes about it, but it's real. Right. They also make the jokes about all the booze they got. Their hurricane preparation kit is their cases of beer and all of that. And, again, so we're not being glib. It's reality. That's what people do. It's a way to change their state. It's a coping mechanism. So is abuse. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way to control a situation. So when a person who's abusive, who went to work and one of their outlets was to be able to make a difference because they were able to control something at work, they come home and they're like, okay, well, at least I'm able to control, and I'm a workaholic. Now they're home all the time and they don't have the same interaction, the same control over people. Now the energy is up, the frustration is up, and we see the jokes about, I found my friend gave me the best strategy finally to keep my kids, quiet. And you'll see, like, as a joke, they're taped to the floor behind them at their desk. I can't imagine. I mean, Heidi and I are, as balanced as, some of the best people. And we still, with under this pressure, go, wow, this is getting, it was a little frustrating,
Sure.
Not having the, this change. And this is what we do for a living. And this is what, we've mastered this and we help people. We can't imagine what people are going through who don't have the skills or the understanding. And the outlets, the coping mechanisms are going to show up. And it's going to be devastating for people. And there's no real easy answer. It's like this experience in the first place. Like, there's no easy answer. There's one that's going to require an effort. And then the question becomes, which effort are we willing to do? Are we willing to do the effort, the inner work, and or are we going to look for someone else to solve our problems?
Right. Well, then we have families that are together in the house too. So you have kids that are watching the domestic violence and maybe being part of it. And we have to remember that the kids may not be used to being stuck home either. So they have ways of handling and managing their own stress, which have now dissipated, and they have to come up with other ways to,
and they're learning. Now you have an exemplar that's showing this is how you control it.
And if the parents are fighting, and then they're fighting with their parents or their siblings, the whole dynamic really is up for healing. The whole dynamic is up for healing. So people need to reach out for resources. Yes, listen to people like you and Heidi and find out what's going on inside of themselves. I know this is a tough situation, but arguing and fighting doesn't have any help. I said this recently to somebody also. I said, if you're not aligned with what you're supposed to be aligned with, it's going to disintegrate.
Right.
So meaning if you're not aligned with strengthening your immune system, keeping everything calm, going about, just being aware of what's going on, but not being overly aware. I sent my mother an Easter basket yesterday as a present. She was so afraid of the outside world. She left the box out on the porch for hours until, my stepfather finally said, okay, listen, I'm going to go out and check it out. So they snuck out there and checked it out, and it was actually the wrong package. The delivery guy had made the wrong delivery, so they had to call the person and get the box and all this, right? And they were so frustrated by the end of it. And I said, well, what a great distraction from yourselves, because they're getting on each other's nerves. And she'll call me and say one thing, and I'll be like, you just have to remember you love him. This is your buddy. This is your best friend. Yeah, you're both stuck in the house, but guess what? Just make the best of it. Don't seek for the things that you want to fight over, the little nitpicky things, because that can lead to other stuff. Work together, figure out where the box came from, then get your treats. Right? Can't you use that whole situation as an analogy for life?
Totally. And it goes back to then assuming the best about people.
Right. Yeah.
And, keeping it simple of just recognizing that we are all in this together. and we all have different models of the world. We all want to be happy, safe, and sound. And, you know, that's, to me, if you just kind of extrapolate it to just life stuff, that's like getting mad at someone who, if they like, part of the way they have fun is skydiving, and you're deathly afraid of skydiving, you never do it. You don't make the person wrong and demonize them because they that's something they like to do. You go, oh, that's how you have fun. I have fun knitting. The skydiver is not going to be like, knitting's so stupid. Why are you doing that?
Right.
So how is it? What's so unique about this conversation that I see society having is the very hypocrisy within it lies of accept everything but you.
Right.
Like, and
it's asinine. It makes absolutely no sense why we don't apply the same knowledge that we know creates better things to all situations. Why are we saying, well, you don't agree with me, so I can't be friends? Well,
and what's crazy is, and so, you know, and I hate to say this, it sounds horrible, but it appears this way to me, is that's like a bully. You know, the bully sits there and starts poking the bear, punching. The little guy stands up, finally does something, and then the bully goes, that guy hit me.
Right.
And you're like, what?
It's a narcissistic trait, really. Really,
Yeah.
you provoke. It's gaslighting. You provoke, and then you say, see, you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody has the bear inside. The mama bear wakes up when her kids are threatened, right? So it's like, why can't we just accept everybody for who they are, good, bad, and ugly, and move on about it? What's the problem?
So the secondary gain is the conditioning, and it's now the conforming bias that occurs. Mm-hmm. So when you've locked into a certain belief system about somebody, about something, we've been conditioned to demonize people. Now, by the way, we demonize ourselves. That's the other thing is, you know, the work that I do, you know, if you say, I am depressed, I am angry, I am worthless, I am whatever it is, we're already used to doing it to ourselves. We've also been conditioned to calling people out as a thing and personifying it rather than it's a behavior, because your behavior you can change with certainly more ease than you can a belief about yourself and identity. It's harder to change your identity than it is an expression of it.
Sure.
So we've been so conditioned now to demonization on both sides, you know, like, again, but because it makes great fodder for news. That's the other thing. Like, none of this would happen. I don't believe this could have happened if we didn't have 24-hour news and social media. Like, this couldn't happen if you had to buy the newspaper. The news would travel too slow. People would be able to question it because they go, oh, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not being bombarded. I also, not at the same exact time, I also saw this other report. And then to get into media and all that, people are no longer news people. They're opinion. They're editorialists. There's all these news channels. There isn't enough news to go on. So it's all opinions going on. But people are forgetting that they're watching opinions, not actual news delivery. There isn't that much going on, which is why they repeat the same thing over and over again through the opinions of whomever is sharing it, because they're looking for their 15 minutes of fame so that they could be the next, you know, whoever the big news person is.
It used to be news would have to report both sides of the story as a requirement, right? They had to be equal in their opportunities for people to make up their own minds. We have totally lost that. And I have actually watched the laws change since 9/11. It's a little hobby of mine to track that. And I have watched the systematic demise of people's personal privacy rights go out the window. I mean, even anybody can really say anything to that now, but to know the actual, how the laws have changed and why they've changed and who made those decisions, we can't possibly blame all of this on one person anyway. And I think, you know, Trump is the kind of person who doesn't mind if you hate him. He doesn't mind if you don't like him, and he doesn't mind if you care.
Right. And that's what I love about, like or hate them. I love people who are willing to just be themselves, and they know they're not going to change everybody's mind. So rather than try and change people's minds, he's doing what he believes in. And isn't that ultimately what we really celebrate and what inspires us? If we look at the hero's journey and we look at the people who, who've made a difference in the world, they made a difference for good or for bad because they weren't kowtowing, because they were just willing to just be themselves and recognized, hey, I'm not going to change your mind and I'm not going to try to. Now I might, kind of nudge you back because you're, saying something that may not be the most appropriate, but, again, like him or hate him, he has his own opinion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also what drives people who, they've made a decision, they've made the bias, I hate him. So it doesn't matter what he does. He could solve the problem tomorrow and they'd say he did it wrong. But same is true on the other side. So it's not, I don't know that.
There was a big buildup of bias over the last 3 years. So there was plenty of opportunities, even in the campaign days, for people to start building that momentum of hate towards him, and therefore they don't support or listen to anything he says. No matter when he has done some good things. I can find a list of things that he has done that are good. So he's a horrible speaker. You probably wouldn't hire him to come and do one of your trainings. Right? He really is not a very good speaker. We knew that right off the bat. But the one thing he did do was he talked authentically from his source, and he would just say what he felt, and people realized very quickly they better get a control of that. So whoever writes his scripts or whoever coaches him on his speaking moments, they honed in on that and they changed the way he spoke. His whole speaking demeanor is different than what it was when he first came into office. Have you noticed that? Yeah.
And one of the things, too, I noticed about, and again, I'm not glued to the news, but he's one of the first people that I saw actually say, guys, are we taking into consideration the impact that this is going to have on people, on domestic violence, on addiction, on suicides, and all this? Like, and this is before people are starting talking about it. This was right at the onset. He's like, I kind of feel like in some sense he was bulldozed. He's in a position where he's getting everyone kind of come in. So at some point he also does have to capitulate to everybody because he knows he's not that powerful. Right. But he's like, okay, can we have this conversation? Obviously I want people to be safe, but obviously the cure can't be worse than the cause.
Well, he's caught saying that several times, and it's true. You can't have the solution be bigger than the problem.
And the whole thing with hydroxychloroquine, I haven't heard anyone actually say what the serious implications are, like that it's deadly. Because I look back at my experiences growing up, and I've had situations where the doc has been like, you know what? Why don't you try this antibiotic? It may work. It may not. It's not going to, just make sure that you drink a lot of water, take care of yourself, don't drink, and, have some yogurt. Now I realize this is a more intense antibiotic, but it's not like they're saying, well, the only way you could cure this is if we cut off both your arms.
I'm sorry, this is terrible.
Right, I mean,
but
straight. If I don't take it, I have an 80% chance of dying. If I do take it, I have a 60% chance of dying. So my odds go up 20%, and you just have to monitor my heart. I'll do it.
Wouldn't it be better to come up with a drug therapy option for this than mandated yearly vaccines for it? I believe it would be. Who makes all the money from a yearly mandated vaccine? I think this is a money game. This is a power trip,
100%.
Money game. Nobody wants a treatment. They want a vaccine that you're required to get every single year.
Not only that, you have two things going on. The first one is the obvious, what you just shared earlier. Now, if they make it mandatory, and Gates is already starting to, because he created Microsoft, he's the,
therefore he's
authority.
Qualified.
Yeah. He's like, oh, we should also have, like on your passports, travel bans that you can't travel unless you're vaccinated. So there's one. So now there's control. There's another way to control people. And then the other thing is going down supernatural rabbit holes. We don't know for sure whether there is or isn't nanotechnology and all of those things, or if there will be in the future, conditioning us to the fact that we always have to be. So now if we're just conditioned that, okay, before you get on the plane, you got to shoot me with something. Okay, before, next thing you know, the behavior is in there that you can insert whatever you want. You can insert whatever rules or mandates you want because they're moving the free line. We're becoming more accepting to the intrusions that we already have, so that when they add more or modify it, it's not that big jump. So that's why we can't jump from where we are to love. We go to curiosity because that jump is too far. They never would have done, and it's like, the way they're going to try and probably take guns or whatever. It's all a control thing. But what's going to happen is they're going to get it to a point, I guess. I mean, it's totally made up. But the only way, like, you can see it happen is by pushing people, getting into a firefight, and then go, see, that's why we got to take away people's guns. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are coming in and going, give me your guns. And you're going, well, no, what did I do?
Nothing. And
then the shootout starts, and then who's the bad guy? Because the government serves everything. And then they go, see, it's for your own good.
Right.
You don't know any
Why
better.
don't more people see this, Doug? Why is this not the conversation everyone is having?
Back to the double down. If I'm a liberal, if I'm an anti-gun, if I'm a conservative, it doesn't matter. Although, again, I lean obviously more conservative. But I call it more common sensitive, just common thinking. It's not. I just find that to be more. I'm an independent. Like, I'm registered. I don't subscribe to any particular party. I go, okay, let me make a decision. I'm going to. If you're asking me to vote on something, I'm just going to run the bias of, does this make sense? Does this make sense to me? Not because you told me.
Right.
Unfortunately, if you come from a perspective. Because I have the conversations about guns, and it's so interesting. The people who I know who are anti, it's out of fear. Mm-hmm. It's out of a lack of understanding. So it goes back to education. It's about a lack of understanding, and it's about a lack of appreciation for something beyond their smaller scope, because they have had a past experience, or maybe they don't understand guns. I mean, I grew up around guns, so to me, it's no big deal.
Right.
But
and you know how to use them, and you know how to be safe with them. So it's just about.
I keep them with my alcohol in my kid's room. What else do you?
That's not true. That's not true.
But that's the thing. That level of sarcasm, people can't even do sometimes.
No,
they
can't. But they can't even deal with the level of sarcasm.
And at least finally, I think some comedians are trying to come back, and they're realizing that they're losing out on opportunities because political correctness has gone so far out of control. And it's sad, because I was watching like an old movie the other day, and I look back at even, the television shows of the past. It used to be a sitcom. At the end of every one, there was a message. There was a positive message. There was some lesson wrapped into that show, whether even though there's some wacky stuff, but like Archie Bunker was such a great example of, you were able to make fun of him, even though some of his views, some of them were crazy, but some of them were brilliant. And that was life. Life is not that clean. And I think what has happened is people want their life to be so clean, so sterile, so free of any amount of stress. We've been conditioned that life should be just blissful and happy, and, and everything should just come, let's all kumbaya. And nature doesn't work that way.
No.
Nothing does.
Nature is violent. Nature is not all pretty, happy little lotus cushions.
No. So why are we expecting that we should have it any different? And when we demonize, I believe there was a senator from New York the other day said something along the lines of, or congresswoman saying something about how, those people, those real estate people, they're just making money because they own real estate. They're not demonizing people who own real estate, who make money on rentals
and pay taxes
and provide jobs and homes for people. We own real estate, and it's not a walk in the park. It's not, it's like, you can't demonize people for finding a strategy that is holistic, that makes a difference. And to expect that everybody is perfect is the other thing, is unbelievable. We all make mistakes. And, we're going back to maybe some golden rules, and maybe we do need to represent ourselves to simple 10 commandments, and maybe the idolization that God was talking about, and if you even take it deeper to God is you're one with God, is the way we've now made this technology, this news, this whomever your pundit is, your idol, your God. You're taking that information and not processing it out, not running filters, not connecting to your intuition, to your deeper self, to your higher self. And that's maybe what the message was there too, that, back then it was preying on the God of whatever, when really he was saying you have everything you need within you. Now our idols, instead of some external gods are our technology, are our celebrity, are our politicians, are all of that, which actually is why I posted that funny thing. Did you see Time Bandits, that movie?
I haven't watched it yet, but I did see that you posted it, so I'll get to it.
Oh, it's very short. It's like a minute and a half. And basically the movie it's a cute movie in the 80s. But the devil is in there, and he's like making fun of God for making like nature. He's like, you know what I would have started with? Digital watches. And then from there, I'd make fax machines and televisions and computers, because that you can control. And it was just such an interesting thing. Like inherently, I think we all know that. I think that's what's so scary. I think people now become so proud that they are afraid to go, oops.
I made a mistake. I was wrong.
Because we're so visceral. Instead of just because we've gone so far, the gap is so far to just go to, I'm sorry. The gap is so far to even go, maybe I was wrong. Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't agree. That is even a huge gap. So that's where we're unfortunately at the moment stuck, and we need to ease our way back in to connecting. And again, I think, as we shared, is assuming the best out of someone and focusing on purpose rather than process. And that's notwithstanding all the other craziness.
Sure. Well, that's good points. And so we're close and wrapping up our hour. So what do you have to say as a goodbye token of wisdom for everybody who's going to be watching this?
I would say just represent yourself to your gifts, represent yourself to how you can support others, and you've got to take care of yourself first. That doesn't mean you have to lock yourself into your room and never go out again. That means going out and being a leader. That means going about and thinking for yourself and proving what's possible by being a leader, by being a servant leader, to find ways to show what's possible and ease your way out there, right? But what I don't understand is what we're waiting for is all of a sudden on whatever date, then it's all going to be open. Well, why wait? Start going out a little bit and, do stuff.
Why not?
Slowly.
Wisdom.
Right. And learn how to manage your state, right? And that's obviously what I teach is come from a place of, let's start with curiosity, compassion, appreciation. When you notice yourself in fear, in anger, in frustration, just question it. What do I have to believe in order to feel this way? What am I doing with my body that's doing it? Interrupt that pattern with your body. Change if you're feeling that way, watching the news, change it. Put on some comedy. Watch some Practical Jokers. Show's brilliant. It's on all the time now. It's awesome.
Monty Python is my go-to.
Monty Python. Amazing.
The rabbit scene.
Rabbit dynamite.
All right. That's a wrap. Thank you so much, Doug. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about your many and wonderful opportunities to work with people?
So revolutionarygrowth.com is my site. And on Facebook, our page, just look up Doug and Heidi, Dug McGuirk or Heidi, find us both. We have a page together called Revolutionary Growth. And we're here to serve. Thank you so much for this awesome conversation.
Fabulous. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Peace.
Stay well.